concordances, classified lists of all the words in an author's work or other body of texts. It enables us to carry out major exercises in collation, the comparison of different versions of a work, and order the output in ready form for further analysis. The collation software Collate, currently housed at Saskatoon University in Canada, has compared 58 versions of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales and worked out a stemma or family tree, grouping them by varying degrees of correspondence. Another collation software, Probate, developed and housed at Jadavpur University, has compared virtually all versions, sometimes as many as 20, of Tagore's vast corpus in Bengali and English at 3 levels. First, the canto, scene, or chapter, not chunks, then narrowing it down to the particular stanza, speech, or paragraph, and finally to the individual word. Such exercises would have been not only impossible, but virtually inconceivable without the resources of the computer. The important point is that this processing of Chaucer's or Tagore's text are not exercises in simple quantification. They do not represent an updated version of the kind of fatuous inquiry in T.S. Eliot's example of counting how many times giraffes are mentioned in the English novel. In fact, there is nothing quantitative or technical about the conclusions finally enabled by such data mining. They support the traditional agenda for the study of creative literature, as do other applications of computational text analysis. Besides collation, another major group of programs relate to the kind of exercise exemplified by topic modeling, but going beyond what is commonly called topic modeling. In other words, locating sets or clusters of words recurring through a body of texts with the end of determining the common salient concerns. I should imagine that these kinds of analyses would be extremely relevant and illuminating with historical documents or historical study. Advanced exercises in this field can explore basic features of the textual condition, linking up with computational linguistics, as in the exciting Mapping Metaphor project of the University of Glasgow. Collation and topic modeling programs work through highly refined applications of the search function. So, I would venture to suggest, do virtually all programs of computational text analysis. They hunt out every occurrence of relevant words, or sometimes their non-occurrence, as with collation, and examine the patterns they form to prove or disprove an interpretative point. In other words, they provide an unprecedentedly efficacious tool for scholars to carry out much the same tasks as in the pre-computer era. But the computer also enables critical tasks that were earlier so far beyond our reach as to be effectively unthinkable. For instance, the practice of distant reading, which is not the precise opposite of the time-honored exercise called close reading. This is distant reading as proposed by Franco Moretti of Stanford University, whereby we do not probe the details of a particular text, but examine its place in a vast process of textual circulation and interaction. It is an exercise in tracking rather than reading, but it defines the milieu or context of a work more scrupulously than earlier scholars could have dreamt of, which may be why they did not dare dream of it until it arrived at their doorstep. To repeat my opening point, computational analysis of art in any medium has been decried as reducing the intuitive, affective principles of aesthetically distinguished material to crudely mechanical and quantitative terms. I once had a piquant discussion with a noted scholar of medieval European music. He insisted to the last that this music was too subtle and complex for computer analysis, although I reminded him that medieval European culture specifically associated music with mathematics as a component of the quadrivium, or fourfold path of knowledge, of which the other three were arithmetic, geometry, and astronomy. The computer fundamentally challenges any assertion that a line of inquiry is too complex to be resolved by mechanical means. A computer is indeed a machine, a truth we should not forget and to which I will later return, but it enables far more refined and intricate analysis than the unaided human faculties. The more complex and elusive an issue is, the more justification, not less, for turning to the computer. It is simply perverse to deny the instrument's powers of disentangling the complex. Digital humanities is a nascent discipline, or subdiscipline, but it will assuredly play a crucial role in humanistic studies in the future, along the lines of textual studies in conventional literary research. This is a major procedural consequence, which in turn has profound intellectual implications. The humanities are adopting on some scale the standard research practice of the sciences and even social sciences, namely team-based, project-oriented research. To extract and process huge quantities of data on the computer calls for specialized technicals, often not commanded by the student of pure humanities. The next generation will surely see a new category of academic workers skilled in both humanistic and computational principles. It is the duty of our universities to train such personnel and ensure their employment in the pursuit of knowledge. At a more general level, computational analysis calls for a great deal of preliminary data processing that specialized scholars cannot and need not carry out hands-on. As in much scientific research, they need only provide the guiding intelligence. Yet, and this again is a fundamental point, we cannot, in this instance as in most others, simply transfer the research practices of science to the humanities, especially to the study of the arts. This is because the material of the arts, a poem, a painting, a piece of music, generates an intuitive response in the people for whom it is primarily meant. And to generate this response is the primary purpose of art. No quantitative or other scientific analysis can dismiss this intuitive response. Rather, it must analyze the factors behind that response, behind that intuition, conducting its factual or quantitative inquiry against a control model that is necessarily and intrinsically intuitive, as it cannot be in the sciences, even if great scientists often say that the research is guided by an intuitive vision. I'm on my last page. This amounts to say that human analysis of the computer analysis, the application of a controlling intelligence guiding the collection and processing of data, is, I will not say more necessary, for it is vital everywhere, but more evidently and intensively, even invasively necessary in humanistic inquiry. It calls for an open, explicit dialogue between the human and the machine, each stage of data analysis being reviewed by the human intelligence and returned to the computer for the next level of analysis in the light of its earlier findings. In the process, the human will also have reviewed and fine-tuned his or her own intuitive apprehension at the start. I repeat that I'm not so foolish as to hold that this dialogic process is absent in scientific research. I'm sure it is no less crucial there in all fields of research. But for the reason I have suggested, that initial anchoring in intuition, the digital humanities might serve specially to make it a prominent article of the philosophy of computational analysis. Ultimately, all research is generated by the human mind working in the solitude of its own absorbed energy. Its best icon is the scholar in his study, in splendid withdrawal from the distractions of the world. But those who read English at Presidency College in the 1960s, that image will indelibly take the form of Professor Taraknath Sen sitting on a little island of light in the dark and cavernous arts library at an hour close to midnight. As the poet Yeats puts it, in lines now inscribed in a plaque in that library, and that Chopin has just assured me will be preserved even if the partition walls are pulled down. Truth flourishes where the student's lamp has shone, and there alone. But today, the student's lamp might be reflected and magnified on the screens of 1,000 computers. This makes it easier to give socialized form to the pristine scholarly energy emanating from the individual intellect, whereby the inquirer comes to terms with himself or herself. More than ever before, the inquirer can now also muster a dedicated band, dedicated in both senses, and committed to the task and also specially devoted to the task, and circulate the results to a public which, through the electronic media, is potentially worldwide in a vastly more intensive way than in the age of print. We are living through one of the greatest knowledge revolutions in human history. In my view, the digital revolution is greater than the transition from manuscript to print. It can be compared only to the passage from orality to writing. It is not only a technological, but a profound epistemological revolution, altering our concept of knowledge and the means of attaining to it. The humanities have as much to gain from it as any other sphere of the intellect. It is my suspicion that they have just as much to contribute. Thank you.
Well, I didn't withhold my temptation to describe Professor Sukanta Chaudhuri as a polymath of the humanities. And now I'm tempted to say that we got a glimpse of his mind, a non-Puritan mind, a non-orthogonal mind. He started with pure literature and talked about digital linguistics, digital extraction of verbal texts. This is wonderful. It's really been an experience sitting through and listening to you. Read some of your work, but never listened to you before. It's been a real experience for me, as I'm sure for the audience. Questions for Professor Chaudhuri?
I hope I'm not depriving time for a student to ask the question. But I want to raise this issue of neuroaesthetics and the new development in neurobiology as it relates to human ability to make speeches. Particular area designated in the brain to make sentences and syntax. Issues such as dyslexia, propensity to make certain sentences, repetition, all these things coming under scrutiny through neurobiology. And when I thought about this, about 15 years ago, in fact, in Bangla, I wrote a book on this issue and researched it. And it seemed to me that the whole thing was started by Noam Chomsky when he presented his idea of universal grammar, and then his student like Pinker and others. And as you just you mentioned, people like Derrida and Foucault and others, took it in a very different direction. So given that we know we got the speech through evolution, there was a time when proto-humans could not speak, and then they spoke. So whatever text they're producing now, and the fact that the text itself has its life of its own, but ultimately we ought to be able to relate it to the biological endowment and areas in the brain which is making this speech. Would you comment on that?
Well, actually, I must say, I have prevented from